What are your concerns about this, if any, or as you look at it from an ethical standpoint, what questions are raised for you?
Well, really, from the ethical perspective, again, is to look at the science first. The Institute of Medicine has come out with a report that says that there may be, in certain situations, times when this is an effective treatment for certain conditions when other sort of treatments have failed. And if that's true, and if that's what the science says, from an ethical perspective, we want to make sure that patients can get, have informed consent and get the kinds of treatments that they need. And there really would be a professional obligation to inform patients about that. And if there are laws that frustrate, if it happens that that is proper, ethical, good medical treatment, if laws frustrate that, then what can we do about the laws to make sure that we don't have obstacles to treatment? But certainly we also want to make sure that we don't go too far and support perhaps non-therapeutic uses from an, sort of a medical ethics perspective. We want to balance, have balance in that.
I mean, I envision you're in a room, he has cancer, you don't, you're in the room together. Mm-hmm. Doesn't that create a dilemma for law enforcement? You're in the room,
yeah.
He has cancer, he's smoking pot, and you're in the room too.
Yeah.
Could you be arrested for that?
For being in the room with him?
Yeah.
I hope not.
But I mean,
probably. I mean, I don't have cancer. This is hypothetical.
I'm just saying.
But,
I mean,
I think you could,
this is
right?
where I'm going with that.
But I think what the president's memo, what came out of the Department of Justice, is that
That's
we want to allow
discretion.
we want to allow some common sense. We don't want to say, okay, we throw the book at any instance, and we really do want to look at the medical. But it is very limited, sort of narrowly to a medical use.
And the federal government arrests very few individual users of marijuana.
It's an appearance ticket in many cases, right?
Well, no, not under federal law. The presence of a mere seed is a felony. It's a terrible law, but they don't have the resources to go around chasing pot smokers around. They're mostly looking at people smuggling and bigger cases.
Well, aren't they really trying to say to states, I mean, isn't this sort of what they want? Is that they want more states to look at this as a way to get more states to allow for medical marijuana? I mean, you're with the AMA, they're lobbying for it, you support, the group supports medical marijuana across the country. Isn't it sort of what they're doing that they're hoping that more states will do this?
I'm not sure the federal government ever knows what it's really doing. But go back to my lady. I sent her up to Roswell.
Patient, right?
Right. Sent her up to Roswell Park, and I had a clinician who had a new form of treatment. And as you know, cancer of the pancreas, you don't live very long.
Right.
And when she would get on the thruway and head towards Rochester, she'd start throwing up because she knew, like many of our patients, just the thought of having therapy was going to make her ill.
Mm-hmm.
So her husband asked me if I knew anybody who had marijuana. Decided possibility. So their oldest daughter had been a dealer. So anyway, make a long story short, she smoked marijuana not on a daily basis. She would smoke marijuana on the days that she knew she was going to get chemotherapy and be sick. She lived 15 years, cancer-free.
Cancer-free.
Died of a heart attack last year.
Because she was able to relieve her symptoms in this way.
So she continued her therapy.
So what are the concerns here? I mean, obviously, we're not talking, I mean, in New York, you still have to buy it illegally, quote unquote. Well, it's illegal. You still have to buy.
Not really.
Okay,
it's illegal to buy it in New York. However, personal possession is decriminalized. It has been since '74 or something like that, mid-'70s. In the privacy of your home, if it's not lit, if it's not in public view, as they say, it's a violation, so it's not a criminal offense, not a misdemeanor. There's a maximum $100 fine.
An appearance ticket.
An appearance ticket, just like a parking thing or something. I mean, it's decriminalized.
So so what's the big deal then?
The big deal is there's no way to buy it legally. If you get caught buying that half an ounce or whatever, that's a crime. And there's no way to grow it, and if you are smoking it in public view, that's a misdemeanor.
You also raised, Amy,
this
issue, but Amy, you also raised the issue that if someone in New York, for example, our next guest, would go to another state where it is legal, what questions does that raise?
I mean, you have to look at sort of when they come back to a state, like New York, if it's not legal for the use, what does that, do for their treatment, and how do we make sure that sort of state laws aren't frustrating medical treatment that might be necessary. What might be medically necessary in California, why is it not medically necessary in New York? And how do we make sure that laws aren't frustrating the good medical care that the gentleman who's going to come on next would need? But I think it's important to emphasize, too, that what the Department of Justice memorandum does really is it's not broaching the criminalization subject. It really is looking at sort of this enforcement and discretion, and really at this medical, sort of a narrowly tailored medical use.
Not only.
If you look at the memo, I mean, they really were very careful to word it very carefully about that they still believe that marijuana is a dangerous drug. Let's even go to that point. Is it dangerous, Dr. Doherty?
I have a young man who, along with 3 of his friends, were driving up in Oswego County, and they were all high on grass. And the problem with pot smoking and driving, you miscalculate time, distance, and lights. They rear-ended a car, drove it into a train, killed all 3 occupants. State police came down from the Pulaski barracks and ticketed them, feared to keep car under control, inclement driving condition. They breathalyzed them. Of course, they're breathalyzed negative.
But there was no alcohol.
No. And my guy, he had so much guilt. He said, I'll tell you something, promise not to put it in the chart. I said, I have people who have killed people. I don't put it in the chart. And he had so much guilt about that he had killed somebody.
So there is so this idea of the impairment of cognitive ability obviously is a concern. Yet you still believe that under medically necessary conditions, as we'll hear in just a few moments, MS, HIV. What about the treatment of HIV? Does pot smoking help? What happens there?
The people I've talked to who have gotten access to pot were wasting away, literally wasting away, because they just couldn't eat, nausea and vomiting all the time. It was amazing to see them a month later that they put on weight and the color was better. So it does help that, no doubt about it.
What do you think will happen? I mean, Nick, what do you hope happens?
Well, first of all, the Institute of Medicine that you mentioned earlier says that it is not a gateway drug. I mean, that's pretty much.
And I think you agree with that.
Absolutely.
That's.
In fact, your study, your paper says nicotine is more of a gateway drug than anything else.
Correct.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So what do I think will happen? I think that this is going to be confusing. There are a lot of issues here that we don't have time to touch on. It mentions, for instance, firearms. It says it's okay if it's legal under the state laws to smoke marijuana. The feds won't interfere. However, possessing a firearm, even legally and legitimately, while you're using an illegal drug under federal law, is a felony. This is a big crime. So there's a lot of things here that are complicated.
What some people, observers, are saying quickly is that this will open up more conversation about the medical use of marijuana, and we may see more states enact it. Do you agree with that?
I believe we will. It's probably another 10 states are already looking at it now.
Yeah, and New York is too. All right.
And I think it'll ease the fears of politicians in those states that are considering. They're reluctant to go against federal law.
All right, we'll meet the case study coming up. That's Nicholas Isle from Reconsider, Dr. Ronald Doherty, he's an expert in this area, and Amy Campbell is an ethicist from Upstate Medical University.